Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Today, Sana is a little bit late because of the traffic. It is a special date. Today, we are expecting the ruling of Supreme Court of Pakistan regarding Speaker's ruling. So, we are going to talk about that in the first segment of today's program. And later on, I think Sana is also going to join us. The moment she does, I will return the podium back to her. But till that time, we have to actually carry the program and we have to look at the developments of today. One aspect that is quite interesting is that all parties have finished their arguments in the Honorable Court. Now, the Honorable Court is expected to give its judgment by 7:30 p.m. today. And everyone is expecting and hoping that a solution comes to this systemic problem that has arisen. During the hearing, we heard the Honorable Court also mentioning that the ruling of the Speaker seems to be or appears to be wrong. And then we heard the Attorney General of Pakistan as well, who refused to defend the ruling itself. Now, what exactly happens, we are going to talk about that. And then the second segment is about something else, but something that is connected. And that is the state of economy in the current situation. We know that dollar's value keeps on appreciating and rupee keeps on falling. And then we saw a policy shift or policy rate change as well announced by the State Bank of Pakistan because of the currency stability issue. We are going to talk about the ramifications of the current gridlock and its impact on the economy. We are going to talk about all these matters, and in order to help us understand, apart from our panel, as usual, I'm also joined by Raja Faisal, who's sitting right beside me. Thank you very much for joining us, Raja Faisal. We are still waiting to see what exactly becomes of this situation. And meanwhile, we are joined on Skype by Barrister Sayyid Ali Raza, who's a senior lawyer, and also Barrister Safiullah Ghori. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the program. Let me ask you about this today's judgment, Safiullah Ghori. Do you anticipate some dramatic shift in the judgment, or do you think that there is going to be some middle course that might be taken?
So, thank you very much for having me, Farrukh. I feel the court has been giving mixed signals. On the one hand, it's clear that this ruling is illegal. They pointed out many things. There were multiple illegalities. It's not just the constitutional and the procedural illegality. The ruling itself was also unsigned by Qasim Sooli, the deputy speaker, and it being unsigned itself is sufficient reason enough to return. But that said, they consulted multiple lawyers on the matter, and I'm firmly of the opinion that the Supreme Court is convinced that it was illegal. However, the Supreme Court did make multiple mentions to the idea of national security. Early in the morning, when the Supreme Court stated and said, asked the parties to try and resolve the matter amongst themselves in the interest of the country. The Supreme Court has consistently been saying that they are going to be looking at multiple factors, including the economy. And so, whereas on the one hand, the Supreme Court has clearly said that they are not bound by anything other than the Constitution, they keep referring to other things. And in the latter part of the arguments, lengthy debate on the economy, the stock exchange, the price of the dollars, the price of petroleum, everything was brought up before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court shied away from taking notice of these things,
And
but did say
hang
they
on,
would
hang
take
on.
this into
Raja
consideration.
Faisal, I saw your hand being raised, although I will request you to raise your right hand because that is the hand that is in my line of sight. But before that, allow me to actually bring in the other guest, Barrister Sayyid Ali Raza. Sir, your take on today's importance and what to expect from the judgment.
Hey, thank you so much. I would agree with what my learned friend Ambassador Gauri is talking about. He's given a fairly good synopsis of the current event. I think it does appear to be the case that the Supreme Court has given an indication that the Deputy Speaker's action prima facie appears to be illegal. What is interesting is that what is going to flow from that? Are they going to actually, after holding the Deputy Speaker's action legal, subsequently restore the assemblies and ask for a vote of no confidence to be taken. Because the logical flow out of this would be that if an action is purported to be illegal, the superstructure on which it vests upon should also be declared illegal. And the fact that, yes, we were all privy to the fact that the Supreme Court did ask or commented upon the economy and other matters which were external to and not intrinsic to the case. One argument would be that for necessity reasons, and I use this term carefully, the court might actually declare the Deputy Speaker's actions illegal, but may still ask for elections to go ahead. Which would be an interesting turn of events.
It will be, let me go to Raja Faisal again, otherwise he's going to break the screen and jump at me. Please, Raja Faisal, go ahead.
Yeah, Barrister Saif, I just wanted to, come towards you. I wanted to ask you, looking at the cable gate and of course the way it was being highlighted in PTI's Jalsas as well, and of course PTI is all set to get it used in the coming elections as well. I just wanted to know if the cable gate was investigated and the proofs were given at that time, then could it be that in the Supreme Court today's verdict would have been a bit different about whatever Deputy Speaker has done?
Right. Very quickly, one intervention though, Faisal, it is Barrister Safi, not Saf. Let us, that stands corrected. Yeah. But by the way, I just noticed that you have started referring to it as cable gate rather than letter gate. Before that, you were actually calling it letter gate. So there seems to be something that seems to be shifting. Let's first go to Safi, and then I'm going to come to you as well for a question. Barrister Safi, go ahead.
Right. So the question as far as the letter is concerned was also discussed in the Supreme Court today. And it's the findings were, in my opinion, quite shocking. They brought along the minutes of the Security Committee of the Parliament, and they asked what happened to the National Security Council's minutes that were brought before the Parliamentary Security Committee. It was revealed before the court that the National Security Advisor was not present in the meeting, nor was the Foreign Minister present in the meeting. And the National Security Advisor being present in the meeting is a necessity for the quorum of the National Security Committee to be constituted. In his absence, so we have some very, very important things missing. Number one, the Supreme Court pointed out that we do not know the names of the people who attended the meeting. Number two, we do not know the ranks of the people who attended the meeting. We do know that two key members, the National Security Advisor and the Foreign Minister, were not present. And we don't know what the minutes are. We do not know who signed off on it. We do not know if it was even endorsed properly because there is no legal trail of the endorsement. Now, it has been stated by the former Prime Minister Imran Khan that this has been endorsed by the National Security Committee, but no such endorsement, physical endorsement in writing, has come about before the Honorable Court as yet. And this could be nail in PTI's coffin, metaphorically speaking, if this were to be raised. However, once again, I will shy away from mentioning that this is going to become a big issue, because the Supreme Court has also clearly stated that they are going to be looking at the legality only of the Deputy Speaker's ruling and nothing else. So even though this was brought up, this would be an obiter dicta. This would not be the ratio descendi of the judgment or the ruling, whichever Supreme Court gives today. This will, however, open up a massive Pandora's box on cases that will open up in the next coming few weeks. This will be a problem, but not immediately. That much I can assure.
Barrister Ali Razal, let me come back to what you were saying earlier. Let me ask you about something very interesting. Today we saw the Election Commission of Pakistan responding to the President's letter and saying that the elections cannot be held before October. When you actually look at the possibility of this ruling being declared nullified, and then you also see what the Election Commission of Pakistan actually said, do you still think that there is a possibility of elections going forward?
Yes, I mean it is quite interesting that the election commission has said that it doesn't have the requisite time to hold elections, and it requires a minimum of say 6 months to hold elections in October. The point is that this entire scenario has and morphed into or kind of metastasized into a constitutional crisis, where I think this ruling today will kind of clarify where things flow. Because if the Supreme Court provides that or orders that that the vote of no confidence was in fact illegal, and that the assemblies were not dissolved correctly, and that they need to be reconstituted, then another possibility is that the opposition has about 1 year or more than 1 year firmly in the saddle, pursuant to which elections can actually take place later. So it's all speculative. It's more kind of a lottery where everybody's betting as to what the actual outcome is. But I suspect that because of the actual reference by the bench to the economy and policy matters, one should always be very careful about arbiter statements, because that is never a true reflection of what the order is. But an indication could actually be that the court might just let the elections go ahead as planned within the next 3 months, and the ECP might just actually take this matter to the court, or the ECP is taken to the court as to when the elections would be held, which may brew yet another crisis in the making, which is not ideal. But again, as Barrister
Barrister
Saab has
Ali,
also stated,
hang on, sir. Barrister Ali, we have to take a small break. When we come back, we are going to resume the discussion from here. But earlier, you were repeatedly pointing out that economy had nothing to do with the case. It might not have anything to do with the merits of the case, but it helps in contextualizing the current scenario. We take a small break, viewers. When we come back, Sana will have actually taken back the stewardship of the program, and we will resume from right here.
Welcome back to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, who have just joined in. And previously, Farrukh was taking over charge and doing so very well. When we talk about what has been going on with regards to the Supreme Court hearing, of course, that is something that everyone has their eyes and ears on. A lot of this, of course, has already been discussed with regards to what is the possible outcome. I'd also like to engage our guests, both Sayyid Raza Ali and Barrister Safiullah Qari, in also taking a look at whether or not there are other possibilities when we look at the outcome of the Supreme Court's verdict today. Mr. Safiullah, could there be a possibility that perhaps the ruling with regards to particular members of PTI or any other political party can actually be charged against or disqualified in terms of the ruling being violated, and perhaps generally the elections can be given a go-ahead, but specific people from the ruling party can actually be disqualified?
Absolutely, Sana. Absolutely. So, if this is definitely a possibility, if the government were to hold that the actions by the PTI were illegal, and this needs to then, if this obviously this is not intrinsically tied in with its illegality, but this could stretch on and then result in their disqualification, because if it were to be proven that Imran Khan misused Article 5. That Qasim Suri also misused Article 5 for the purposes of not protecting the state, but rather for protection of the party, then they do stand a chance of disqualification under 52(1)(b), and this is something that they ought to be wary of, because at the moment what we're seeing a war of two possible parties which could be treasonous. Either it's the PDM that's treasonous, or it's PTI that's treasonous. Now, I would hope that the court would not call either party treasonous, because that's just counterproductive to the country. However, a strict reading of the constitution would mean that either of the parties, either one party was instrumental in trying to destabilize Pakistan, or the other party misused constitutional provisions, and then that resulted in abrogation of the constitution, which is a crime under Article 6. And so, yes, that could very well not only mean disqualification, but also criminal entries and charges in the future. If nothing else, at the very least, sedition charges is something that I expect.
Could we see a JIT forming related to that, sir?
That's a very good question, and I feel yes, because this is a matter that the Deputy Speaker himself said needs investigation, and the Supreme Court has also shied away from any investigation onto the matter. So I do believe that they would want to further figure out whether there was in fact a real external threat to Pakistan, and if there was a threat to Pakistan, if there was a letter that was sent to Imran Khan, whether that letter was in any manner properly connected to the vote of no confidence. And as yet we do not know. All we know is that he received a letter on the 7th of March, and the vote of no confidence began on the 8th of March. We do not know if these two actions are interconnected. The former Prime Minister Imran Khan, has been saying that these both are a result of each other, that intrinsically they are the same. However, the opposition and the United States of America have also very clearly denied that connection. And so we obviously need to look into it, and we need to see where this is going. Also,
Right. Right, Mr. Saeed Razali, when we look at the option of elections being called on, and this being something that is going to be part of the judgment, isn't this something based on the fact that we look at the ruling to come out in terms of letting bygones be bygones, or going towards stability and moving on with factors that are good for peace and progress of the country, irrespective of whether or not the constitution was violated or not? Does that not mean that this is going to set a precedent, which is of course going to be questionable and problematic? And then on what basis or what premise will the elections actually be called on for if the entire basis of it is questionable?
Let me also add to this, Barrister Ali, that status quo, it seems, maintaining status quo seems to be problematic. Because it is not a tenable position. On one side, somebody might be declared guilty because one, there might be a conspiracy, otherwise somebody tried to sabotage the constitution. Is it not so?
Well, I think what's significant is that we have to understand what is the Supreme Court's essential task over here under Article 1843. What does it seek to accomplish by first looking at what is it in front of it, which is whether the action of the Deputy Speaker was indeed illegal. Now, if it strikes down that act as illegal, and there's very few constitutional experts who have actually said that the acts were legal. All the arguments that the acts might have some form of immunity under Article 58 have essentially been struck down. So, in my opinion, the logical flow from that is that if the Deputy Speaker's acts were illegal, whose task was just under the National Assembly's rules of business to count the vote and nothing else, and not to pass any kind of an order which was quasi-judicial in nature, then logically the assemblies, the actual dissolution of the assemblies which flowed from this is also illegal. There can be no ifs and buts, and there can't be an issue of trying to save this for the purposes of national security or stability, because frankly that is not the Supreme Court's job. Their job is to assess whether an illegality has been committed and then proceed from that.
Yeah. Barrister Ali, if we look at Chief Justice comment in today's, obviously while he was hearing everyone, he did ask about who had the most of the numbers in terms of a political party in the parliament. So he did ask Shahbaz Sharif as well that were you the party having the most of the numbers in the parliament? That means that he was actually highlighting them lines as well, where he believes that whoever had the most number of course should have been having the government. So could we say that things would be dragged towards the way horse trading was conducted in recent times, and the way this majority by the PDM was claimed, the ethical issues would be highlighted as well in it?
Yes, it's not just simply an ethical issue, and I believe what you're saying, what you're referring to was not a statement by the Chief Justice, but if I believe it was by Justice Ijazul Ehsan, who I think asked this particular question. Yeah, I think the issue of horse trading is a very serious issue. It is not just an ethical issue; it's also a legal issue. But a remedy against horse trading is actually provided against in the Constitution itself. This is Article 63A. And whilst that remedy can only be exercised after the vote of no confidence takes place, where a parliamentary head sees that its members have voted against party discipline, then there is a remedy in which they can be show caused, and if found guilty, they can actually be punished for that. So those two arguments stand hand in hand. But right now, to my mind, I am clear that if there is an order that seeks to some kind of a compromise in view of national interest, that is not again in consonance with the spirit of the trichotomy of powers. It is not the Supreme
Barrister
Court's
Ali,
job
very
to
quickly, since you
encroach
talked
into this.
about finding anybody guilty, let me also ask you, when is somebody found guilty? Before committing a crime or after committing a crime? Before casting a vote or before casting a vote but showing your intent as well?
Yes. So again, it's a very good question. If the spirit of 63A was that you could be disqualified automatically at the time of actually casting a vote, which is by a show of hands, then that is what the spirit intended. But the Supreme Court has clarified this, I think, in a judgment in 2015, that if a member does go against party discipline and votes in a vote of no confidence, you have to send them a show cause notice. You have to ask for a particular hearing, and sometimes it's not just linked to simply whether stacks of money have changed hands. Sometimes members may actually genuinely vote against their conscience. Yeah, but that is to be determined simply.
Right, we're almost out of time for this segment. My last question to you, Barrister Safi, with regards to, of course, there has been throughout all of this a lot of talk about whether or not this falls under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court or not. When we talk about Article 63, which is also what the Supreme Court is looking at, does that fall into the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court?
Yes, of course. I think one of the reasons why, and it's very clearly something that the Supreme Court has taken cognizance of, the presidential reference under Article 63A that has been sent to the Supreme Court for advisory is already something that the Supreme Court has clubbed with this matter, and so therefore has already assumed jurisdiction. So one would presume, yes, that the Supreme Court feels that it's well within its rights. I just want to quickly say that there was a lot of conversation going on about what the Supreme Court might do. I want to point out the fact that today the PTI's lawyers, their primary argument was that of the doctrine of necessity and doing what Ziaul Haq did with the Junaid government. And so that we have some legal precedents as well, as far as that is concerned. So that is something that the Supreme Court could rely on. Only that previous Junaid precedents with Ziaul Haq, only to try and suggest that this is something that is in the best interest of the country. However, once again, even that precedents had a lot of caveats, because by that time re-elections were already fixed. The Election Commission had already started work. Post that, there's yet another case in which Nawaz Sharif's government was toppled, but then the caretaker government was already appointed. So by that standard, this case stands out as a very different case, where even the doctrine of necessity would be really stretching itself if it were to be applied.
Right. Thank you so much, Barrister Safiullah and Barrister Saeed Raza Ali, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. In our next segment, we'll also be taking a look at, of course, the economic impacts of this situation. There is a lot going on at the political front, and we understand that this is important. This holds historic importance and significance for the country and the people of Pakistan as well. But the economic impacts and the lives of the people are also getting impacted by it, and that, of course, is also of high importance. Political instability never is a good indicator for the economy of the country. But Farrukh, with regards to what has been happening in the previous month or so within the country, how significantly has it affected our economy?
Right, Sana, this is a very important question, because on one side we have seen that IMF, with whom we had an arrangement, a lending arrangement, they have suspended the program at this moment because they don't deal in situations of uncertainty, right? At this moment, we don't have a finance minister, and that is why the situation is such that they haven't actually dealt with Pakistan. But regardless of that, one has to actually also point out that these concerns might have something to do with what is happening right now with the economy, but the economy already was suffering in the recent days. We saw that dollar was continuously appreciating. That's why perhaps today the State Bank of Pakistan has actually taken a very important step. It has hiked the policy rate by 250 basis points to the 12.25%. That is important because they are trying to control the inflation and stabilize Pakistan's currency as well. But while this happens, remember, uncertainty is always bad for the country, and that continues. Why do we have instability right now, even if the political instability was not there? Because in the election years, usually governments try to actually expend all the fiscal space in order to win hearts and minds, and that is what we saw recently, that the crude prices kept on moving up, but we didn't pass on that change to the people of Pakistan. So the economy at this moment is bleeding, and somebody will be needed to stop it as soon as possible.
Right. Let me also welcome in the show Dr. Sajid Amin, who's the Deputy Executive Director, SDPI. Thank you very much, Dr. Sajid, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Of course, it's apparent that the economy is suffering because of what has been going on in the country for a while now. But when we talk about all of the instances where we have seen the economy suffer, even in the past many years as well, when we look at the kind of progress or measures that are needed for the economy to be stabilized and the kind of political situation we're currently... Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but with some noise actually. It's just flanging actually.
All right. I hope it's better now. When we look at the situation in the country in terms of our political situation and the impact that it has on the economy, what sort of a future scenario would stabilize or help at least improve the economic situation of the country at the moment? Of course, we're looking at fresh elections perhaps that are going to be a part of our future. Is that going to help the economic situation of the country?
Well, thank you. Thank you. Let me start by saying that the situation that we are seeing is more than actually the election economics. It's not a general election economics scenario that we always see. Unfortunately, the macroeconomic crises are very frequent in Pakistan. You know, it's a routine matter actually. But this time, the political crisis has overlapped the macroeconomic crisis actually. And this has really increased the severity of this crisis that we are seeing. And one thing that I think that your question refers to is that what is the, if I can suggest, what is the one thing that is needed, that is actually the stable government, the uncertainty that should be diffused actually on the political fronts. Because at this time, I think, I've been saying in another program as well that at this time the biggest macroeconomic risk in Pakistan is the political risk, that uncertainty or the constitutional crisis that we are having. This needs to go at the earliest, because if anyone has to decide how to fight external imbalances, current account deficits are rising, balance of payment crisis is on board already almost. The foreign reserves with state banks are already touching below, around $11 billion. The pressure on rupee you can see also touching 190. So we need a very stable government which can actually correct the external imbalances and the internal imbalances.
Right.
And this
Dr.
is what
Amin, first of all, Dr. Amin, let me congratulate you on assuming the new office. You have been just elevated to a new post. Congratulations on that. But also, let me ask you about our dealings with IMF. At this moment, the program stands suspended. But tomorrow, if there's going to be fresh elections and if we are going to go into the caretaker mode, do you think that IMF at that time will resume dealing with Pakistan, or will it wait for the elected government to assume office and after that they will resume it?
Well, thank you. Very important question. And I think we have been discussing it already, even in office and many other places. This is one of the key questions that every Pakistani is asking, actually, particularly who is concerned about economy. I think there are two possible scenarios. If you see the IMF's recent statement, it kind of shows that they are looking to negotiate the program, seventh review, with some stable government, actually. Because if you see the wording, actually, was that we will talk to the government about the intentions of economic stability. This really tells the story that the governments are the steps taken by the last governments, particularly PM's relief package and other. They were sort of what I call as virtual exit from the IMF program. So I think there can be two possible scenarios. But one recommendation that I have been continuously giving, that any government, be it the PDM allies are restored, be it the caretaker governments of the technocrats, we should engage IMF at any, I mean, not at any cost, I would say, but at a reasonable, with commitments, we have to engage, because exiting IMF at this point of time, or disengaging IMF at this point, will be very costly. A rupee will be under huge pressure, and then the credibility of the economy. IMF is not only that we have a $6 billion or the $5 billion. We can have this money from others as well, but this is about a kind of character certificate for the economy. And there are two likely scenarios that can happen. If a caretaker government comes, like people are talking about the technocrats, for example, we say this may overly tilt towards stabilization of the economy at the cost of the poor people. And yet you see every economic stabilization program brings huge costs of unemployment, poverty, inflation to the poor people. And on the other extreme, if the PDM government is sort of comes after the whatever the decision is from the Supreme Court, there is another sort of the risk that they can go for the election mode and may not take the necessary steps to engage with IMF, and that will have its own costs. So I think any government, we need a balanced approach. IMF must be engaged.
Yeah, Dr. Sajid, there is a third situation as well, in which, of course, we are listening coming from ECP that election commissioner, the chief election commissioner, he has written to the president that it would not be possible for him to conduct elections, of course, within 3 months. And he is seeking time until October. That could be 6 months. So in this scenario, do you think that it would be a bad factor for our economy as well? Because 6 months with, of course, interim setup, I think it would deepen the uncertainty.
I think uncertainty will actually reduce to if it is referred or it is compared to what is the uncertainty level today. No matter it is for the 6 months or the 4 months, that definitely ECP has to decide, or the Supreme Court has to decide. But I think any government for 6 months or 8 months or 4 months or 3 months, whatever the period is, but you have some stability actually. You have some clear outlook that who is taking a decision. There is a cabinet, there is a prime minister who is engaging with the IMF. Right now, you see, there is no clarity who should engage with the stakeholders, be it international development partners like IMF, or be it the internal stakeholders. So I think whatever the decision comes, it is a 3 month, 4 month, or 6 month, whatever it is, I think the uncertainty will be reduced. But there needs to be a balanced approach from any government which comes for
Dr.
3
Sajid, with reference to the state bank's decision to increase the interest rates by a significant amount, how do you think this is going to impact the economy in the long run?
Definitely, it is going to slow down the economic activity exactly. But I think this was expected. Last MPC, I think State Bank adopted the policy of wait and see, which I think it should have been the other way, also better way, if there was a sort of nominal increase of maybe 50 base points or 75 base points, because we knew that we are heading towards inflation, rupee is under pressure, and current account pressure is piling up. So, but at that time, I think the State Bank adopted the policy to wait and see. But the emergency raise was sort of on cards, because this mass level political uncertainty was not predictable when the last MPC was done. But definitely, it will have a sort of
slowing down effect on the economy. Dr. Amin, let me go dig a bit deeper. This is my 7th government where we are debating macroeconomic stabilization. Do you think that macroeconomic stabilization is even possible now? Because repeatedly we keep on committing, and then we see that every time every government actually fails to reform the way it is supposed to reform.
Yes, exactly. You raised a very sort of unfortunate point that we have been having throughout our histories of economic reforms, that generally we don't implement those economic reforms. We commit, what has been the circle in Pakistan is that we commit to IMF, we bring that program, we started sort of consolidation with huge costs on the poor people. If you see 2019, before even coronavirus, we have been touching 1.9% of GDP growth. manufacturing was shrinking. But unfortunately, when these consolidation period starts sort of giving towards stabilization, the governments enter into an election mode. They enter into a populist mode, and sort of we lose those stabilization program or the measures without having any gains for the public at large for the Pakistan. And this is exactly happening.
Dr. Saab, counter argument that even if you don't have an elected government like General Pervez Musharraf stayed here for 8 years, even there, whatever measures were taken actually fizzled away.
Yeah, this is one point that I've been highlighting over last 3 to 5 years exactly, that there is a fundamental problem in the structure of economic growth of Pakistan. The stabilization is an artificial and ad hoc by definition. Pakistan has to move toward the sustainability of economic growth, and that is actually determined not by how you go to the IMF or what reforms you take place. It is actually where is that growth coming from? How many people, what sectors of people are participating? If you see the Bangladesh example exactly, the growth is coming from SMEs. There is a increased female labor force participation. It is promoting economic inclusion, and that is why there has been a consistently 5% growth rate, then above 5%, and now they are touching on 7 and 8%. So Pakistan's policy focus, unfortunately, has been on stabilization, that is through ad hoc measures exactly. So no
Right,
matter
Dr. Sajid,
how
Dr.
strict
Sajid, of course, there are
the
lots of mega projects that have also been underway with regards to Pakistan's economy, and CPEC is, of course, of great significance to Pakistan as well. But a lot of the progress has been slowed down as well based on various factors. But when we look at whatever is the result, if there are elections or if there is a change of government, how do you think it's going to impact the mega projects of the country, particularly CPEC?
And very quickly, Dr. Saab, adding to this, today Shehbaz Sharif, the opposition leader, once again reiterated his proposal of a charter of economy. Although I don't know how that works in a democracy where every party has their own charter. But do you think that that is an idea that we all can actually support?
Yes, exactly. I think if one idea that needs support from everybody, no matter which political party you come from, which sort of sector of the life population you come from, that is the charter of economy, and that is the minimum agenda that I think everybody support. I've been talking in another program that any government comes, be it this government or be it the after election government, there should be 5 priority key areas that every government needs to focus. Number one, we need to keep politics separate from the economy. We have to prioritize economy over the politics, number one. Any government who comes must put a top priority on inflation control. Unfortunately, we have not been given that due focus on inflation. I mean, whenever there is the highest office asking that Pakistan is the cheapest country, we have the lowest inflation, sort of the prices in the world, when we are actually the 4th number on the inflation, that actually shows a lack of commitment. So second priority, that should be the inflation. The third, at this moment of time, any government that must engage IMF. While there can be discussions that these are the commitments that we can do at this point of time, these commitments can be delayed post-election government when there is a new fresh mandate. There can be the possibility, but we have to engage the IMF. And the last, 4th point is to immediately, because whenever you are going for stabilization, if you see the today's monetary policy, there has been a huge increase. I mean, this is definitely going to hurt the poor people, those who are actually in the job market. So there
Right.
should be any
Thank you
compensation.
so much, Dr. Sajid Zameen, for joining us. We're unfortunately out of time, but thank you very much for being a part of the debate. Of course, there's a lot that is still on the table, and there is so much that we don't know which direction the country is going to be taking. But of course, at the end of the day, we understand that instability is not going to be helpful for the country, and we need to move on to a place where we can actually economically empower and secure our citizens. And that's, of course, the hope. Thank you so much for watching the debate. We'll join you tomorrow at the same time.